Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Mr. Fisher, and we are speaking today directly to all of you listeners out there who are gym owners who want a little more freedom from your gym. Maybe in the months to come or the years to come, you want to spend a little less time working in your business, a little more time working on your business, or maybe a little bit of time working completely outside of your business. So, for those of you who want a little more freedom, a little more flexibility, a different relationship with your gym, we're going to share our experience doing that for both Mark and myself and share a bunch of best practices we've seen to how to make that transition to be out of your business a little bit more as seamless as possible. So if that sounds like you, keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business of Unicorns podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to give you a quick reminder that we have a lot of free tools and templates and resources on our website. And there's one in particular that we think is fantastic, which is a template for how and when to raise your rates as a gym owner. We really think you should be raising your rates for your clients every single year. And we know that can be a difficult process for you. So we made a really simple, really straightforward template, including emails that you can just copy and paste and send to your clients. So if you haven't raised your rates in a while because you're a little stressed about it, we see you, we feel you. Click the link down below in the show notes and go get that free resource. It's free. That brings me to today's episode with Mr. Mark Fisher. How are you, Mr. Fisher?
I am doing well. The sun is finally shining. We finally see the sun again after
I know
it's clouds.
Yeah, it's been pretty rainy in the city, though. We did get a little sunshine this weekend. We both got a chance to go do a friendshipping out on an apple orchard. We did a little apple picking with some friends, which was a blast.
It was great. Bunch of old-time MFFers.
Was that your daughter Cece's first time at an apple orchard? I can't remember.
You know, it's funny. The last time she went was 2 years ago, but it was a smaller crew. It was with your husband and Laura Martinson.
That's right.
And her babies.
She was baby. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that now.
Baby. Yeah. So it was like,
yeah, that's amazing.
Fun, but we had to carry her around. She didn't say anything.
Yeah, she couldn't pick any apples yet.
Silently making noises. Boring.
Well, let's dive into today's topic. Today, what we want to talk about is really based on a lot of things we hear, a lot of things that we hear from our Unicorn Signing members, is that many of them want more freedom in their life. They want more, I'll refer to this as like work-life balance. They want to step away from their gym a little bit more, have a little more free time to spend time with their family, go apple picking, maybe even start other work endeavors, or just, more flexibility. So, and getting that freedom, one of the biggest fears that they have, and we hear this on a regular basis, is that the minute they start to step away from the gym, and the minute they start to step away and spend less hours with their team and with their clients, there's immediate, and I think very valid worry that people are going to start to notice and be resentful and be kind of question, like, where's Mark? Where's the guy whose name is on the side of the building? And that's a real barrier for gym owners who are wanting to have a little bit more freedom and space from their gym. They really worry, and rightfully so, that the team and the clients are going to notice, and it's not going to go well. That they're going to resent it and be mad about it. And I think from our own personal experience, I think it's a reasonable concern. And we want to talk a little bit about today about things that we've seen that can help in this transition, things that maybe we've seen that have not helped in this transition. So for all of you listening who are on that path to wanting more freedom with and from your gym, that you have some tactics you can use that helps that transition be as smooth as possible. Fisher, I know you've got a lot of experience here, especially as someone whose literal name is on the side of the building and you're not in there as much as you used to be. You maybe just talk at a high level about what your experience has been on this topic?
Yes, I think, as always, I think there's like a mindset component for how we think about this and what to expect and to emotionally prepare for. And then there's like skill sets, like what are the things that we do that make this go smoother? I'll speak to the mindset component first, because I feel like I very regularly have some version. The first version of this conversation is the gym owner, I should say, that's on the floor, maybe 25, 30 hours per week. They're finally ratcheting down. Maybe they're down to, let's say, 10 hours per week, which is not nothing. You're still there plenty. And they start getting clients making snide, passive aggressive comments that where are you? Yeah. Oh, look at you. You're here today. right? And sometimes they even leave. I've gotten loads of cutting feedback about this. That's an exaggeration, but I've gotten some people unhappy about things in the suggestion box.
Yeah.
And then I think a bigger version of that, actually, you can have a similar phenomenon with your team based on what happens with you professionally. It's rare air. Most people, frankly, never get there, but a lot of people aspire to. And some people get to the place where their gym doesn't really need them there a lot of the time. And even if the
Hmm.
gym needs them to do things, they just don't necessarily need to be on site. Maybe they choose to not be on site either because they want to, or they find they actually get stuff better even when they're not there. And that can also lead to a different kind of feelings. And I think the obligations to your clients and to your team are a little bit different. I'll start with the client one first, because that one I think is easy. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, they'll be they'll be upset. If you want to have some specific conversations, you could. But in practice, this is usually controlled slip. You usually don't go from you're doing 25 of 30 hours in a given week to the next week you're now on
Yeah.
this floor 2 hours and never again, and people never see you. So I think the
Yeah.
main thing here is just to know that this is going to happen. It's because people like you. If you build good systems, you will mitigate the cost of this because people like the other people that they're training with, and they'll know that the systems will be consistent, and they'll trust you still have your hand on the till. And there are going to be some clients that just don't like this, and you're going to probably lose some, right? And I think if we
Yeah.
look at the logically absurd extreme version of this would be the equivalent of not opening up a gym because you have let's say 8 one-on-one clients, and 2 of them are holding you hostage, and they're like, no, but I need you, and I've paid for years, I've given you this much money, and you've depended upon me to pay your rent. You can't possibly not do one-on-ones with me. And this is where we get into this tension between, well, what do you want? I do think you need to consider what the client wants, but ultimately at a certain point, I think this is the mindset probably for both of these, is you just have to accept, if you do the things you want to do, you need to consider the impact on other people. And I think there's a balance. I'm not suggesting you should just do whatever you want to do. Some people, myself, tend to overweight other people's needs. And while you don't want to do a pullout that is reckless, that like leaves carnage because you were so thoughtless, and we'll move in a minute into the skill set piece. I think part of doing this is just accepting some people in your life are going to want you to do things that at some
Hmm.
point you need to be comfortable just choosing that I'm not going to do this thing that it's very important to you that I do, because it's just not the life I want to live. It's not how I want to be in the world. And that's hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of gym owners through it. It was very hard when I went through it, but I think that's the first mindset piece. And I'll pull up there before we chat about any tactics.
Yeah, we can totally dive into tactics next. I just want to, obviously, I aggressively agree. And I think if there's even like a larger mindset kind of mantra here, is really understanding as a gym owner, as a leader, that things are always changing. Things are
Yeah.
always changing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of how the world works. That's part of how life works, and I mean that in a very like real sense. That if it's not changing, there's room for concern when it
Yes.
comes to business. And the thing that is allowed to change that we often don't give ourselves permission for is that you as an owner are allowed to change what you want, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
okay for you as a person to change what you want from your business, what you want, what you want from your life, and that's going to have an impact on how you show up in your business. It's going to have an impact on your clients and your team. And so there's a big picture mindset. It's really embrace that like things are often changing, and that's going to be upsetting for some people, like Fisher said, and you might lose some folks. But your job is to really give yourself permission to build the life and the business that works for you,
Yeah.
in
Yeah. I think so.
collaboration with what works for other people. And we'll talk more about the tactics,
Yeah.
which I think do this well.
Yeah.
But I just
Yeah.
want to aggressively agree. Yeah,
Yeah. Because I
yeah.
think the
So let's
tactics
dive
are
into
how
tactics when it
you.
comes to clients. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna add related to, I think the tactics are, I think, where you sort of actionize what is it
Yes.
that the other people need. Because I will say this, I don't think anybody listening to this podcast is at risk of this, but it is possible. Actually, it doesn't happen a lot, but it is possible. And I've seen it sometimes where people actually care too little about what their clients
Sure.
and their team think, right? Where it's so much
Sure.
about like, this is my business. I made this for me. I took the risk,
Of course.
F everybody. Again, my suspicion is if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably not you. That tends not to
No,
be the people
it's
we
not the kind of
attract.
people we tend to attract in
Yeah,
unicorn
yeah.
society, right?
I
Right.
just
But you're
wanted to
right that
name
I'm
that,
sure
like,
they exist.
yeah,
Yes.
that is possible.
Totally.
That is definitely possible. I definitely like know of people. I was like, ooh. So because I
Yeah.
do think you have some obligation. Listen, if you open up the gym, you care about these relationships. So now perhaps we can move on to some of the things we do to action. Preserving the relationships and making this smooth. So I have a few things, but Kiera, I'm wondering, do you have anything offhand that strikes you as a good
Yeah,
consideration?
I'll just pick the first one. I think this will be a theme, and actually in this transition when it comes to communicating with your clients and your team, which is I think that storytelling is really useful in this transition.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is making sure that you open up to your clients to the extent that you are comfortable, and maybe a little bit farther beyond where you're comfortable, and be vulnerable and honest with them about your journey as a gym owner, about the fact that, hey, all of you as my clients right now have really helped me get to X place. I'm so grateful. I'll be eternally grateful for all of you who've done one-on-one training with me, etc. And now I'm transitioning to a place where I want to start growing a team. I want to impact more people just like you. And by growing a team, it means you might see me a little less. I'm a little sad about that. I think you're going to be a little sad about that. And I also know that you want me to thrive and continue growing this business that you believe in, you've helped me build. And I think, I can go on here and you can imagine the story we keep telling about the future together, right? As you see me less, also know that I'm investing in other people that I'm going to bring into our space. I'm going to mentor and teach them to do everything that I've done with you as we can impact more people. And so you get the idea. But the point here is that I think narrative, is important, right? Because you're crafting a story about you and your
Yep.
business and your relationship with your clients. And the more that you can kind of own that story and share it with them candidly and maybe with some vulnerability, I think it goes a long way to taking them with you through this transition instead of letting them feel left behind. Because most of you, like we just mentioned, are really centering them in your decision making here, and you're considering them strongly in every decision you make, as you should. So you have to tell that story about all the consideration you've given to this transition, and I think anyway, I'll end there to say, yeah, I think the storytelling really matters here.
Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. If you haven't had a chance yet to leave us a rating and a review on wherever platform you listen to this podcast, it would be so awesome if you take just a quick second to do that. And here's why. Number one, by leaving us a rating and review, you'll allow our podcast audience to grow so more gym owners can build a life and a gym they love. And number two, by leaving us feedback, you'll help us shape the future of the podcast so we know what you like, we know what you don't like, and we know what types of content is resonating and what else should we create for you. Thank you so much for your consideration. And now back to the show.
To that.
Well, it's interesting because I think, when you think about the team piece, I think that becomes so truly life or death. That's not to suggest that it doesn't matter for clients or there's not a place for it. But keep in mind, depending on the context of your particular situation, you might not need to film a 15-minute tearful YouTube video to your clients to let them know about your vision, about why it's changing. But you depending, it's actually not impossible that there's some sort of explicit acknowledgement. Yeah, depending on, again, the contours of that situation. At the very least, that is likely a thing where you can have some very specific conversations that people are very upset. Because keep in mind, they're upset because they care about you and they want to see you, where you can, have like a real human vulnerable chat that acknowledges that, you feel bad that they're upset about this. You so appreciate them. You feel conflict because you care about them so much. And here's my vision for where I see this gym going, the type of service you can have and the way we impact people, right? With the team, however, it is probably non-negotiable, right? Like there's no world this happens, I think, without explicitly naming what's going on, doing your best to set the expectation. Having done a number of transitions myself from MFF as I've moved into different roles, with the most recent one being have no operational role in the business, you almost can't over, I mean, it's probably the thing we say most, so you kind of can't over communicate it. You could not successfully communicate if you're trying to say it a lot, you didn't land the plane. But ultimately, I think the storytelling of the future of what this business is and what your role will be and how, for them, it's what's in it for me radio.com, right? So I'm not saying there's no place for you saying, but I really, I just need to spend more time with my child and I have these really wealth building goals. So, like that's probably not as inspiring for them. Not to say that that can't be a piece of it, but a lot of it is the story and the vision of where this business is going. And I think related to that is also getting very clear on any new expectations. And then, and this is the thing that in retrospect, I probably could have done a little bit better, but it's very non-intuitive. You keep having to reset those expectations every month for a year. You just have to keep saying it over and over and over. Because some of these times, like I'm pretty good at this point. Like I feel like I did a pretty good job of communicating things, but as always, people just need to hear things more than once. And the specifics of my situation are probably a little bit atypical for what a gym owner will go through, but so to give you something like actionable, in addition to sort of casting this vision for your change goal for the business, making sure it's very clear what people can and should not expect from you, and then reminding of them that maybe not every month, but maybe twice a quarter, and maybe not for 2 years, but I don't know, maybe for a half a year. My experience is it just takes people a long time to update their priors around this. And I'll add one other thing I think is very important before I forget is related to the things they can expect from you, particularly if you're not going to be physically in the building. If you're not going to be physically in the building, and that's part of what you've worked hard, you've earned it, you have the right to not be there. Well, what happens is you're usually not going to working like no hours. In practice, you're still probably working a decent amount. You're just not doing it there. You have to market to your team what you're doing. This is unfortunate. It is unfair. Life is unfair. But absent some clear understanding and reminders of what it is that you are doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to drive the business forward, there unfortunately will be a tendency for a lot of people to assume that you're not doing much of anything. You're just like enjoying a life, counting all your money, right? Which is, probably a different topic about financial transparency. So your team understands you're not becoming a zillionaire off their hard work and sweat. But those are some things that strike me as relevant for the team stuff. So I'll pull up there, Kiros. I'm sure you have some good additions.
Yeah, I'm sure we could keep going back and forth on this one all day because I think we both have a lot of experience here, both ourselves and then talking to Unicorn Society members. I would say if there's just kind of zooming out, I think an approach or a tactic that I think is useful for both clients and team is that people can get used to almost any change if given enough time, right? People can adapt to almost any change if given enough time. So I think the timeline for how your relationship with your team and your clients gets renegotiated, I think really matters. So the more you can give people a heads up that it's coming and roll out the information in a way that doesn't surprise them, doesn't feel like the carpet's being ripped out, it will be easier to digest. Not to say that it's going to be no bumps, but there will be less bumps if you have more time. And I think with more time, goes with this is that the more you can include people in the planning and the conversation and the renegotiations earlier, and there's all kinds of research that backs this up, right? The more people are involved in a change project that affects them, the earlier they're involved, the more likely that change project is to succeed in any organizational change. And so the more you can include even your clients in conversations about seeing you less, or your team in conversations about what your new role is or how your new role affects their role, right? The more time they will have to practically and emotionally, spiritually, to adapt to the new world. So that's not always easy. In some cases, some things have to happen faster, but when you do have the time and you can include people earlier, it will absolutely make this an easier road.
Yes, that feels very, very important. And to put a fine point on it, just so I'm understanding this, I mean, essentially this would be like, would an example of this be like letting your team know, hey team, it's, it's September 1st. Letting you know in January 1st of this year, things are going to change. Nothing is changing for months. And I want to start collaborating with you with some of the ways I think our responsibilities are going to change. I want to invite you to be shareholders with me and at least talk with me about this so we get on the best solution. But what is clear and what is going to be happening is January 1st, I'm going to be here less. And I just want to make sure we're all set up for success. And then people, presumably, even if they still have a big emotional reaction when they first hear about it, which this particular one's maybe not the best example. Hopefully people are not like, what? You're taking Friday mornings off? What? And if so, that's maybe a different conversation we had about the emotional resilience of your team. But yeah, that I think that makes sense to me. Is that sort of what you're implying?
I think that's exactly it, Fisher. I think the same is true for clients too, right? For those of you out there who really are starting off with like one-on-one clients and moving to maybe small group,
Yeah,
or
great example.
and they're not going to see you as much, right? Just really having a conversation like, like, hey, Mrs. Smith, just so you know that starting like 6 months from now, I'm really going to be doubling down on this new thing, which means I might be handing you off to one of my new trainers that I'm
Yep.
onboarding soon.
Yep.
Nothing's happening now. I'm still
Yep.
with you for now, but just know that that's coming. That's where my goals are heading, and I want to make sure that only is positive for you. Right?
Yep.
I want to make sure that we are in good hands, whether you're with me or someone on my team. And same thing with your team, saying like, hey, our goal by the end of next year is for my hours to be this, or my role to be this. I'm going to work with all of you to get there. Right? It's going to be collaborative. We're going to have lots of milestones along the way, but that's where we're heading. And that kind of visioning, right? That in some ways it's storytelling, and involving them early on a longer timeline gives them time to adjust. Because I'll say this, to get to even that point as the owner, you've probably been thinking about this for a while.
Right.
You've probably had months and months, if not years, to think
Yep.
about the
Yep.
fact that you
Yep.
want, Friday mornings off or only work
Yes.
3 days a week.
Yes.
They're just learning about it for the first time.
Yep.
So you got to give them a little time and grace to adapt, because you've been on this plan since
Yes.
for a while,
Yes.
usually.
Yes. 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 Yeah. And that's honestly something I know is a bit hard for me in some of these moments, because I'm adapt to change very quickly. And it's also important to understand your clients and your staff will have various relationships with change. And some of them just in general will struggle with change. I think most people, change is always going to be a bit of a stressor, but if there's probably variance for how comfortable people are with like things moving around and how much people really hold on white knuckle onto the stability of the world that they know. And I've often said, in the metaphor that I use for leadership, that why the vision stuff matters so much, and you have to be thoughtful about change, is it is if you are driving a long, creepy white passenger van and your staff is in the very back, the far back of the van, and you're up front driving. So for you, there's just not a lot of centrifugal force if you just decide, oh, you know what, I'm going to turn and get a cup of coffee. But if you haven't given them all a heads up, if there's no slowness, if that turn is aggressive, they're in the back being flung around. They can't even see outside the windows because we didn't let them know it was coming. We made the turn too abruptly. And certainly that can be a cost for a lot of quick start leaders that embrace change. That's good, but it is possible to do it in a way that is abrupt and then violent.
Yeah. And I think it's exactly what people say when they talk about their workplace and saying, like, I'm just out of the loop. No one tells me what's going on. No one communicates enough, right? I had no idea I'm coming. And worst case scenario of this is that, people get, fired and had no idea it was coming, right? Like the thing that people react to the most, right? The most negative reactions come from this feeling of surprise, this feeling of I was left out. Other people knew before me, right? So just getting in front of that, I think is so critical. Yeah. And doable, right? That's not even asking too much, right? That's totally possible. It requires a little thought, a little planning, some careful communication, but it is totally possible. Well, again, we could keep going on this all day. Any final thoughts here, Fisher, to wrap it up for our listeners out there who are thinking they're on the path to wanting a little more freedom, a little more space from being in their business every single day? Where do they start?
I think that the first place you start with is probably making a plan for what you want your work life to look like. It's something that we do regularly, and a fun suggestion here, which we do pretty regular. I think it might be time to do another one just because it's been a year. Is we'll even do this together as partners and do kind of like a show and tell. Okay, what do you want your work life to be looking like in 3 years? How much money do you want to be making? What sort of hours do you want to be keeping? What sort of work do you want to be doing? I think that's particularly powerful if you have a partner to continue to sync, because what you both want is going to keep evolving. So you want to make sure you're at least periodically touching base on that. Barring you having a partner, it's kind of the same process. You still need to do that for yourself and then figure out, okay, if I want to be here in 3 years, what needs to happen, maybe in the next 12 months. And then this is a good time if you're listening to this, because let's say you're planning to make some hypothetical changes January 1st, or maybe you do February 1st to get through the New Year rush. Well, that gives you some time to really identify where you're going to change your relationship with the business, and then gives you time to communicate to your team, here's the changes that are coming. You can think through who's going to own what. And then, to Kira's point, to the extent you can make it collaborative, that's probably going to be a good idea.
Yeah. Great. I love that. Great summary, Fisher. Awesome. Well, I hope that was useful to all you out there who want a little more freedom. I think that the first step is to go get clear about what you want. Create a little plan for yourself. Do a little audit of how you want to be spending your time, and that's a great place to start. Well, thanks as always for a great conversation, Fisher. And for all of you out there who have not raised your rates recently, don't forget we have that free resource on our website. Click the link down below in the show notes and go get it. It's free. All right. I'll see you on the next one, Fisher.
Bye.